Forging cyber security experts. Secure Ninja.
Hey everyone, I'm Alicia Webb with SecureNinjaTV. Now, our free preview of SecureNinja's online Sensei series has generated such a positive reaction that we've decided to give away every single module from this Cyber Kung Fu course featuring Larry Greenblatt, Tom Updegrove, and me. If you like what you see and would like to experience a Secure Ninja training course in person at any of our training locations, we have some amazing time-sensitive specials for you. Just visit SecureNinja.com/specials for all of the do not miss deals. And now, here is your free module from Cyber Kung Fu for the Certified Ethical Hacker version 8. Enjoy.
All right, welcome to Module 11, Session Hijacking. Now we kind of covered network layer session hijacking when we talked about scanning, and I showed you how sequence numbers worked and talked about what Kevin Mitnick did. So we'll refresh our memory there and make sure we fully get that concept. But because initial sequence numbers are randomized, that initial type of attack is tough to perform. There may be ways around it. If like for instance, I think I said it before, I always ask people, how many people here when I teach at a hotel have attached the hotel wireless? And when their hands go up, I go, are you sure? Sure, there wasn't Evil Larry's wireless adapter. And suppose I connected you to the internet, and then you send a fin to close the session, and I'll FINAC for you, but I don't actually forward that to the server, and I might be able to take over that session. I've never actually seen that happen, but I've read many proof of concepts, and I've heard that called a line disconnect attack. Sounds workable to me. The other one is, and I do a lot of sniffing mostly for network performance. Now, this is a good lesson to learn when you're just doing performance. In fact, let me go to the board and show you something here. When I'm troubleshooting performance, I'll typically start with, let's say, a client's complaining it's very slow. And I go to the client, and maybe I have to run Wireshark on that client, in which case I don't need promiscuous mode, right? But I'm going to see the conversation between the client and the server. And I'll see SYN, SYNAC, ACK. And first of all, I check those times. In fact, your default time column in Wireshark is useless to me. It's the time when I captured. So I actually switch it to Delta format. I want to know the time delay between each packet. And typically, whether LAN or WAN, you might do 10 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds, who knows? But then I see something like this, that maybe the client says something, and then it's really long before the client says something else. There's a huge delta here. Is that a problem? Well, I don't know. Maybe the client logged in and then was just didn't hit enter for a while. So actually, when I see the delta, a long number between two client packets, without a server doing anything, I usually figure that's just a client lag time. That's them just not clicking, they're reading or something like that. But I might see something like this. The server comes back, and then there's this big gap, and then finally the server will come back again. I don't know what's going on there, and that's usually my troubleshooting issue, and then I go back and now I have to do my trace here. Right? So far so good? But let's go back to the client lag time. This would have slipped past. Now again, Murphy's Law versus Satan's Law. I would have seen this, the lag time between a client sending something and then sending something else, as no problem. Well, TCP sequence numbers are still there, statically. And if an attacker could insert themselves in the middle of that, and I hadn't done anything yet, they might be able to take over that session. I'm going to lose my contact because I'm going to be desynchronized. So they actually allude to it on the test in their material. I've never seen it work, but I can understand the concept. Perhaps somebody could sniff the network, see the sequence numbers in question, take somebody offline, or maybe they say insert themselves into the conversation and desynchronize the original client. Could happen. But that's not where I find most session hijacks really take place today. I believe most session hijacks today are at the application layer. So I don't want to steal too much thunder out of our web and application domain, but just consider that when a web server tracks you, they have to give something to let you know they're logged in, because HTTP itself is a static protocol or stateless protocol. So I'll give you a session cookie, and now I know through this session ID that, okay, that's you. Suppose you go to a site and they give you a session ID and they ask you to log in. And so when I log in and I give the right password, that session ID just went from the unauthenticated table to the authenticated table, but it's the same number. Well, couldn't I go to the server that I know Alice likes to go to, get a session ID, then craft like a phishing attack and tell her it's from the server because she likes to go there, right? And she clicks on it and authenticates in. I have that session ID. And as soon as she put in the right username and password, I have an authenticated session ID. Now, the truth is web servers shouldn't just check session IDs. They'll really need to check your IP address as well, but historically, people aren't aware of these things. And when you're not aware, I know what I do when I'm not aware. I leave things at the default, so I don't like to pick on people. Again, in security, it's very common to say it's all these stupid developers' fault. I'm not a developer. I just think it's the complexity of design. I have a hard enough time putting 80 pieces of IKEA furniture together. So, and you got billions and billions of parts. I don't pick on developers. All right, our objectives, understand, I'd never heard this term before, passive session hijacking. I've only seen it in the CEH material. Again, there's semantics of business vocabulary, but Firesheep comes out. And Firesheep was a Firefox plugin that if your card supported promiscuous mode, and it was on their list, because I was annoyed I had the Air PCAP card and it didn't support it, but that little cheapo $36 GSKY or Alpha card does. And it was clear text. This was before the HTTP went over HTTPS. In fact, this is reason why. So what happened was you plugged this in, and I couldn't steal your password. I couldn't see that. That's encrypted. But once you authenticated in, your session was there. So you could sit in like a Starbucks and watch people's Facebook sessions. To me, that's sniffing. But in the EC Council's vocabulary, they'll call that a passive hijack. When I think of a hijack, I think I've redirected the airplane somehow. So I think of active, right? So circuit level, this is when we always think of Mitnick created, as far as I know, the first TCP session hijack. And he did that, again, by being able to predict sequence numbers, initial sequence numbers. Of course, since the traffic, he was spoofing some trusted IP address, right? So Kevin pretends to be the IP address of Satomu Shimomura's home machine and goes to the work machine. Well, his work machine is going to echo those screen captures or echoes back to his home machine. Kevin can't see what he's doing, and it's known as a blind session hijack. Not really, to me, a session hijack, but I could send reset packets just to maybe elude an IDS. So if an IDS is one hop past, say, a router, or just whatever, multiple hops past the target, I could start up a session with the target, and the IDS is tracking it, and then I send a reset, and the IDS goes, oh, he killed that. But not with the same TTLs that's going to actually hit the target. UDP hijack is a little trickier. Again, these are things I think for me are more theoretical. I don't know. Remember, I'm an ops guy. That's why I have Tom here. Tom, he works with this stuff all the time. But in theory, I do a DNS request. I don't really validate if I'm not running DNSSEC that I'm getting a valid reply. Somebody could jump in and give me one. It'd have to be pretty quick, but who knows? It doesn't have to be a person at a keyboard, right? It could be a bot. So I very much suspect this stuff does go on. Application layer hijacks, though, much more common today. It's based on these session IDs, often is stored in cookies. You might be able to guess them. You know, it's, we said in TCP that, in any password system, that you need random numbers or pseudo-randoms and nonces. But people don't always get that, and they just give you a session ID based on the time of day. It's a simple counter. But now they mostly steal them. And they steal them in many cases, and from what I hear, most cases through cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, which is really going to be covered in our web section. But just to plant the seed, a very simple one might be, say I go to whatever, MMAfighters.com. And there's a field, what did you think of the fight last night? And I can put in my comments, and they're going to be stored there. But my comments aren't really, I thought that Randy Couture should have, instead I put in a script. And that script says, go to your local directory, grab the session IDs out of there and report it back to some IP address that I'm going to monitor. So that's how much of this goes. And that would be a persistent cross-site script. Well, again, we'll cover that much more in the web section, right? So just a quick review of the three-way handshake. You will need to know this for your test. When a client talks to a server, they pick an initial sequence number. I'm going to start counting here, and I'm going to number every byte. So in this case, we said it's 2300, right? That's the initial sequence number for the client. The server syntax back. They pick an initial sequence number. And then they ACK the next one they expect to see. So if I gave them 2300, they're going to expect 2301. And so I send an ACK, and that will be sequenced as 53201. Does that make sense? Actually, I'm ACKing the next one they saw. I'm sorry. I'm ACKing. So if they gave me 5200, I'm going to ACK the next one I expect to see. There are times on the test when they've historically have you do a Wireshark trace. So a quick tip. Sequence numbers count the amount of data. Wireshark will always show the SYN as sequence 0 because there's no data. Your ACK will show 1, but since there's no data, the next time you send data will also be 1. And that can be important when you do your sequence number analysis, not only in real life, but on the test. All right, so now, this is what Kevin Mitnick did. He just wanted to see, what is the selection mechanism? So he sends a SYN, they SYN-ACK back, and they sees the sequence number. He doesn't complete the three-way handshake. He just sends a reset, kills it. Let's see. Try it again. Oh, it's a new phone call. I'll number you 2000. Now, this wasn't the actual number, but it was something, a fixed interval. Eventually, you could see, oh, he's choosing it by some fixed interval. All right. So he spoofs the IP address of the host. And again, now, in this case, to put the context, this was Satomu Shimomura's work machine. He had an access control list on it that allowed his home machine to authenticate his root with no password on it, but it was based on the source IP. So when Kevin spoofs the IP address of this spoofed host, so, oh yeah, I can get in, that's my address, the victim server is going to SYN-ACK back to that spoofed host. And we know from scanning that when you get a SYN on a port you're not listening on, you will reset ACK that. So again, he's like, you wanted to talk to me? No, I didn't. Well, I believe you did. No, you didn't. I said, I did. It was known as an ACK storm. Now, I don't know that anybody does this today. I think most people, I don't know, any IP stack will enter a reset. But in those days, you know, it could be the application. Try it again, try it again. So while TCP's not trying it, the app says, nah, there's something wrong here. So this was really bad. Now the ACK storm was like dogs barking. Kevin needs to shut him up. Right? This is like knocking over the trash cans. So he has to, he's SYN floods, denial of service. We learned that in an earlier module, right? Boom, DOS that guy. Figure out where he is on the count again. Oh, this one's 5,000. The next one's going to be 6,000. He spoofs that address. They SYN-ACK back to the client, but now that spoofed host can't reply. He's been SYN flooded. That's okay. Kevin will ACK for him. Now, as far as that victim is concerned, three-way handshake's completed. Kevin could start typing telnet commands that are indeed echoed back to a dead screen. Guys, when you do your web section too, keep in mind that I might be able to do like a SQL injection and I see the table get dumped. But I might do one and I didn't see what happened in the background. It still is effective. We have blind attacks. In this case, Kevin Mitnick did a blind session hijack. But in that, with a SQL injection, it might be a blind injection. So the fact that you hurt the guy, he might not show it. You know, Tom always says he looks at his lips and see them getting purple, and listen to people's breathing. And he said, tells me when you're fighting, don't let a guy know you're tired. He said, you got to make it quiet. You got to make it quiet. Don't let him know you're tired. All right, so it's hard if you're like, ah, sucker, right? All right, so other hijacks, again, if I could take advantage of that user lag time, they hit enter and then they're reading the page before they hit enter. That would be a between the lines. I would kick them off, they'd be desynchronized. Or the line disconnect, you send a fin, I'm man in the middle, and you're going to do a whole bunch of those in your labs. Or just reset hijacking, and that's mostly for IDS evasion, right? UDP hijacks, there are no sequence numbers. So as I mentioned, someone could do, and in this case, I Googled for, I did a DNS lookup for Google. I went to Google and I said, DNS, what's their IP address? Well, I don't know that there's any way to validate who that came from. That's not a signed reply. I didn't get a digital signature there. Anybody could have replied there. Application, again, it's mostly these session IDs. It's either they didn't generate the randoms right, your pseudo-random number generator, again, with web, 24 bits, you can only get so much randomness. Or mostly stolen through a cross-site script, or the case that I mentioned in the beginning, if I log into or I connect to a server and they give me a session ID before I've even logged in, and I can get Alice to now use that. So I send her a phishing attack and, oh, click to the server, and she logs in, and I tell her, use that session ID. Now I have an authenticated session ID. So that's called session fixation. Alicia, any questions on session hijacking?
Yes. What is the most common method of session hijacking today?
Probably stealing session IDs via some type of cross-site scripting vulnerability. So when we were looking at those network layer vulnerabilities, since initial sequence numbers in TCP are randomized, I haven't heard of anybody being able to pull off that attack. It is possible that somebody could do one of those between the lines. So there's a client lag time. I can desynchronize somebody. And to address that, there's actually other protocols at layer 4 not too many people are aware of, but SCTP, the String Control Transmission Protocol, would mitigate that. And I have a feeling that all of those things will go away. But application layer, as I said, the most common today, whether it's that funny link on Facebook or some email somebody told you got to see it, it's really cool, and it turns out to be some stored script, grabs your session IDs and dumps it. So that's the most common way today.
Yeah. And are there any tools to tell you in real time if you're being hijacked?
You know, you could try. You could try like a personal firewall IDS type thing, and maybe they'll work. But if a system's really been hacked, it's going to lie to you, right? So if they root the tools. So my opinion, I'm an old sniffer guy. I still believe I need another device looking at the traffic and just watching it.
Excellent.
Cool.
Makes
As
sense.
we say,
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So we say packets don't lie.
Packets never lie.
Yeah. You can lie in the packet. It's funny, I actually said that to Laura Chappell the first time I heard that expression.
Right.
She goes, and remember, packets don't lie, but because I have these packet crafting tools, I go, you can lie in the packet. And she goes, and I'll have evidence of that too.
Oh my.
Love you, Laura. All right, thank you. That's all for this module.
Now we hope you've enjoyed this free module, but there's lots more. The Cyber Kung Fu course has 29 videos in all and will really help build you a solid understanding of the CEH version 8 curriculum. Don't forget, if you prefer to attend one of Secure Ninja's courses in person at any of our training locations, you really need to visit secureninja.com/specials for some amazing discounts and other deals. I'm Alicia Webb. Happy training.
Secure Ninja TV is brought to you by SecureNinja.com, a world leader in cybersecurity training and certification. Our master instructors will help build you into a highly skilled and marketable security professional. Secure Ninja, forging cybersecurity experts.